I mean, I would say I already gave most of my thoughts yesterday. So now it's all mostly about the numbers, right? Phasers is a bit too good at rushing. Biscuits are a bit too good at BQ, whatever. Options that's taking over too many pages. To be honest, like Biscuit nerf is like, I'm so happy for this. Second win Biscuit nerfs. These are runes that like pros use perma to never die in lane. These are runes that make laning phase less skilled than it is. Our goal here is to make the splash slots a lot more competitive. Splash slots. What are these words? I don't understand. Skarner is receiving a lot of buffs to his baseline damage at the cost of making his R less reliable. We accept this to make naked R cast slightly slower, so that if he didn't land the E beforehand, the ults are harder to touch, which I think is a good thing.
Hey Neymar, do you think EU has any chance to win tomorrow? Happy 64 months.
Yeah, I think GT will win tomorrow. Akshan, LeBlanc, Talon are all receiving nerfs. They're a bit too strong and fast at snowballing in solo queue. Oh, really? Now add like Kiana, add like Rengar, add like bunch of other champions to this list, and that'll be great. For LeBlanc particularly, she will need to choose her spots a little bit more wisely, but this feels like an effective way to nerf her for regular players without impacting her pro play as much. This is cope. This is cope. I'll explain why this is complete cope soon. Talon jungle has been really strong recently, especially in Elite, so we're slowing down his speed to keep really high tempo on the map. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's the only way to nerf Talon jungle, right? But the only way to nerf Talon jungle is to decrease the clear speed, because else you're basically nerfing Talon mid, right? Riot does kinda want Talon mid to still exist, but obviously the longer the game is, the longer the game exists and the average player skill goes up, the less viable Talon mid will be, honestly. But Talon mid will always be probably a thing in like regions like China, which are very bloodbathy. Anyway, so okay, Aesol will get 5 base MS, and Q burst damage will go up by 5 base. And maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe his W move speed is also up by base MS being up. I'm not sure, because it's not in the patch notes. How do we feel about this? I personally feel like it's a strange way to buff our Radiant Soul. I think his movement speed is already pretty high. I'm not sure if like 5 MS is what I would consider a proper way of buffing Aesol. Now, buffing this champion, I think Q damage is probably a good way to buff Aesol. It's hard to really give E the power because he's a very low MMR skewed ability. Maybe R damage could be nice. Q damage, maybe some armor based, like armor per level buff or whatever could be nice. I'm not sure if Moonspeed is really like the correct way. Honestly, this just makes it so if you're an Radiant Soul player, you're even more incentivized to just sit on tier 1 boots and never upgrade them to tier 2. Unless you have feats. It like even makes it more so with these changes. Blitzcrank E cooldown will go from 9 to 7. And at rank 5, it will be the same cooldown. I think this is one of the best buffs that could happen to Blitzcrank. Like, genuinely good buff. I really do like this buff. This will even make it so maybe Blitzcrank chooses W max over E second. I just feel like this is just like a proper way, I think, of buffing this champion. Like, really good job on this buff. Young Q base damage will go up by 5. Let's actually compare it to Yasuo. Yasuo Q damage is what? 20 to 120. So Young Q damage will actually be 5 higher now. Okay. To be honest, I can't complain about buffing Yonq. When it comes to buffs to Yon and Yasuo, I always like Q buffs, because Q is at least an ability that requires some skill and can be dodged, can be sidestepped. So this is a buff that I approve. Auction will lose 20 base health and will lose 1 second CD on Q. I think not the end of the world for the champion. Mostly an early game nerf, and once you're like, I don't know, past level 9, whatever, this will really not be noticeable anymore. This is mostly noticeable in matchups where you're struggling early against Syndra, maybe Malphite, maybe like Orianna. If you play against like very good mage players and they're like bullying you with Scorch and whatever, and yeah, okay. So LeBlanc health growth will go down by 3 and armor growth will be down by 0.5. This is at least 1% win rate nerf for LeBlanc, like maybe a little bit higher than 1%. This will be noticeable. The champion will be very squishy, especially later in the game. Especially against AD champions. Like, this will make it so in late game, if you face like an ADC, he can like one-shot you in like 3 autos, right? You face like a Caitlyn or a Philios and he like auto-attacks you twice and you just get one shot. It will not impact LeBlanc that much in like mage matchups, especially early game. Her early game will pretty much be kind of similar. So Riot is basically stating that this will make it so this nerf will be more of a nerf for regular players and less of a nerf for pro players. Like, sure, Riot, but 1% win rate on the champion is still 1% win rate on the champion. We can like cope all we want about how pros will value damage more and squishiness will not be noticeable more in pro, which maybe is the case, but a nerf is a nerf. Talon, passive monster mod down by 0.1. No idea how much this will impact the clear split. I guess you'll just have to see for the patch. If it's like 4 or 5 seconds slower clear, that's something. So Skarner changes, Q AD growth up by 1, Q bonus AD ratio up by 10, E bonus AD ratio up by a lot from 0 to 120%. This will make it so Skarner will be incentivized to buy Starak in almost every game now. Maybe even Titanic Hydra, but probably just mostly Starak. Q cooldown will go down, but it will be now after first cast, which I think, or I mean after last offensive action. So I think this will be a buff anyway, if I'm not mistaken, just not as a big of a buff as it make the numbers show. And then the R cast will go up by 0.1. I actually like it, because I feel like Skarner is a champ that shouldn't just like be able to blindly R you. I think the champion should be way more reliant on landing some sort of a CC by a teammate or by himself to land the R. So I really like the changes. The lame part about Skarner is still W, where I feel like W is still like a completely irrelevant ability, and it feels bad that you play the champion only with 3 abilities, but buffing Q is probably nice, and the champ needs a buff, and I think these are really big buffs. I would assume this is at least 2% win rate, and I would think that Skarner will be a lot more picked in pro, and it wouldn't surprise me if he becomes like the best pro jungler at some point. Volibear, base armor up by 4. Base AD up by 2. Q minimum move speed down by 2%. Maximum is still 2x the minimum. Which means that I think if it's max move speed, he's losing 4% MS. E total damage cap to minions and monsters will now be 190 to 650. Plus 70% AP. Which I think nerfs his clear split in jungle, right? Because Riot is throwing a compensation nerf to jungle Volibear, who's already the strongest role, and they're trying to buff top lane Volibear more. Okay, I definitely think these are buffs to the champion, most likely, especially top lane Volibear. I can see, because top lane Volibear will rely more on base armor and base AD, and will rely less on Q movement speed in lane, because you're already playing melee to most matchups, right? The sad part for Jungle Volibear is that Jungle Volibear will not care as much for base 4 armor, because he already clears with full HP. Base AD will increase his clear speed by a bit, but then there's compensation nerf on E here. And the Q move speed being down, so Q is an ability that when balancing Volibear, you have to be very careful with, because if he loses too much movement speed, the champion is very prone to being kited, and you give this ability too much movement speed, and the champion can't be kited anymore. This ability is very, very like number reliant, like on what number, like what the movement speed is on this ability is very noticeable. And maybe 2% does not seem like a lot for a champ like Volibear, but I do think that any sort of percent on this ability is very noticeable. So, okay, most of these changes, honestly, not that interesting. A lot of them are placebo, some of them are plus, minus 1%. Okay, cool. Like this auction nerf is probably like 1% win rate. The LeBlanc nerf is probably like maybe 1% or slightly more. Okay, system buffs, something interesting here. So cashback, I said yesterday, if it gets 1%, it will still be useless. If it gets 2%, you might consider it in some spots where you will need boots for the lane. I think overall boots are probably still going to be superior, because basically what this does, this 2%, is this rune will give you like 40 to 60 more gold on average, depending on how expensive the legendary item is. But yeah, anyway, with biscuits being nerfed, biscuits being nerfed, it will make more people consider maybe taking cashback plus cosmic. But yeah, basically it's like, If you're a champion, you take magical footwear, then you will take magical footwear. If your champion needs early boots, then you will probably take cashback. This is a good buff to the rune though. Guardian shield 45 to 150 to 45 180 plus 10% AP ratio, but the same bonus HP. So they're trying to buff Guardian more here for enchanters than for melee supports. It's pretty much the play here, which I think is nice. I think this is okay buff. It's mostly a late game skewed buff. I think this is fine. Halo Blades, a rune that I think does not need a buff whatsoever. And it is criminal that this rune is getting buffed. Is getting 20% more attack speed for melee. I think basically there will be cases now where the 3 attacks happen so fast that people are just like Bluetooth out-attacking you from far away. Pike is getting really big buff here. Cho'Gath is getting big buff. Echo is probably happy because Echo is very close statistically between Electrocute and Halo Blades, but most people prefer Halo Blades because it's more fun. So Echo players are probably very happy with this. I definitely think that this rune does not need a buff. This is completely illegal. Bloodline will get 0.05 more lifesteal per stack. The total lifesteal will go up to 6%. Okay, nice. Some champs are a bit happier. Some champs are a bit not happy. Because, for example, if you're playing Zari, you care a lot about alacrity. If you're playing Jean, you probably care more about Bloodline. So it just kind of depends what you're playing. Movement speed shard is going to 2.5%. So my estimation here is that movement speed shard will be OP, most likely, and correct on a lot of champions, especially solo laners, I think. I think solo laners will use this a lot more. Not sure about junglers, because in jungle, you kind of need the attack speed shard and the AD shard to clear faster. But for supports already do use the movement speed shard in most cases, because 9 AP is useless on supports. For example, Rakan, Nautilus, these champions will probably all use movement speed shard. For ADCs specifically, I think it will depend on lane. For example, if you're Jean, you might consider taking movement speed shard because it's just value on the champion. If you're, I don't know, it just kind of depends on the lane, because 5 AD on lane is also important for trading and last hitting. And maybe you want early game power. I'm not sure how it's going to play out on ADCs, but I'm pretty confident that most mids will take this. Most top laners will take this. And most supports will pretty much take this as well. Yeah, it's just too good. It's just too good. Nimbus Cloak will go up by 1%, 3%, 5%. Okay, sure. I still think the rune is not that good because summoners in League have very high cooldown and you do not get insane amounts of value from this rune, in my opinion. But some champions would just use it naturally. Like Ignite users are happy. Tenacity shard will go up by 5%. Okay. Probably still not that good, to be honest, but it's something. Triple Tonic will get 20 more gold. And then you will get 10 more Adaptive Force. Can't complain. So a lot of jungle champions use this rune. A lot of mid lane and maybe top lane champions can use this rune. Okay, sure. ADCs and will not use this rune because it's not good unless you're smaller. And supports will probably also not use this rune because you level up too slow. But for example, if you're Syndra, you're pretty happy, right? Because you're getting 20 free gold and you're getting a little bit better power spike on 6. Overall, I think this is a very small buff to the rune, and honestly, you're taking it on the same champions in the same scenarios. Biscuits will go from 2% max HP to 1.5% max HP. The heal is 2x the minimum, which means that this is nerfed to 1% if you're very low health. Okay, that will be noticeable. Phase Rush slow resist will go from 75 to 50. Wow, that's a pretty big hit to Phase Rush. On PB it was 60, and I thought that 60 would still be, Phase Rush would be still really good at 60. Now that it's 50 on this number, I actually think that this will be quite noticeable. And if you're getting slowed, Phase Rush will not like give you a, basically, you know, a free escape all the time. You will maybe still have to take phase rush in the same exact champions. Like, for example, if you're playing Galio, you're probably still taking phase rush. You don't have like a different option. If you're taking Talia, you're probably still taking phase rush. If you're playing Rice, you're probably still taking phase rush. The rune is not that by any means. Honestly, what I'm happy about this patch is that runes are finally getting changed, because we had the same runes for a long time and I feel like runes are very stale. That's like the thing I'm happiest the most about this patch. But only 3 champion buffs and only 3 champion lists nerfs is like, I feel like Riot is just on a vacation or something. I don't know what they're doing. MS Shard will be a bar buff. Yeah, it will be. MS Shard buff will be a nerf to every skill shot champion in the game. Zarat will be nerfed, Vel'Koz will be nerfed. All these champions will be very sad with MS Shard being better. I think it's wrong for the game that Riot is buffing MS Shard.